What's up, everybody? It's DisThunder, and we're going to take a look today at the Mezco 112 Collective Doc Nocturnal Phantom Night Edition, which is the San Diego Comic-Con / MezCon 2026 summer exclusive that was already a month ago somehow. Suffice to say, this is my favorite on aesthetics. This is my favorite look for Doc Nocturnal. I love this sort of Crusader-inspired look that he has. Comes across very Monster Hunter-esque, and also has the best face sculpt of any Doc Nocturnal figure, although that's sort of damning it with faint praise. Let's just jump into it, though. Let's not waste any time. And here he is up close with his base armor and his helmet on. Helmet is very cool, done in kind of a soft rubbery plastic that goes over the unmasked head. And like I said, this is my favorite, one of my favorite head sculpts, actually. I can say that pretty definitively. Has a good jawline, has a good hairline. He just exudes some confidence and like he's seen some shit. On the back of the harness, you can see there is a port in the middle of it. That's kind of what ties the harness piece together. And you can see the back of the belt has a couple of clips to hold accessories. Here's how it looks loaded up, where you use that sword sheath to peg those pieces into place. And you can put the grenades on one and the ferryman on the other, although not my favorite way to carry the ferryman. It's an option. Looking at accessories here, we have a rapier and a sheath. We have a warhammer, the crucible broadsword that goes into that cool looking kind of skeletal finger sheath. You have two of these sharpened crucifixes. You have the ferryman with an extra magazine, three of these Hades Inferno grenades, a double-bladed dagger you may recognize from Constantine, and a couple of these small daggers that fit into his boots that you may recognize from somebody else we'll get into in just a second. Here is that Crucible broadsword with its sheath piece in place, and then there's also a sling, kind of a sheath holster that has the port system on it. Again, this is something you've seen before. You might be catching on here. And here's the rapier, using one of the ports on the side of his belt. Obviously, you could do both, but this is much easier to pivot, so this is how I prefer to use it if I'm going to have both swords on him. And one last time, here's a closer look at that awesome sheath for the Crucible sword. That's got some style to it. Definite points for style. And lastly, for weapon storage, here is the dagger tucked into the sheath hidden inside of his Buccaneer boot, which again, this should start looking familiar now. That is because our friend Doc Nock here is borrowing heavily from our old friend Solomon Kane. Although, putting these two boots side by side, it's cool how picking out the details in maroon makes them look like almost different sculpts if you didn't know better. Likewise for the gauntlets, although that's a little easier to tell. So I'm assuming at this point he shares basically entire, the body, gloves, boots, hands are all Solomon Kane. And that seems to carry over because he looks like it'd be the same build and the same height, minus the fact that Solomon Kane has a big head and a big hat, which make him appear a little bit taller. This is cool, though. I think Solomon Kane is really a figure that was just kind of aching for some reuse because he's just so unique. Obviously, all the cloth goods, like his cloak and everything, is new. Here he is with the other two Doc Nocturnals. And like I said, as a result of having Solomon Kane for a base, he's actually a bit bigger than our larger scale Doc Nock that we got last year. As you can see here, they're close. He's just slightly taller, a little bit broader in the shoulder, too, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Get the accessories off here so we can take a look at articulation, but I want to take a second and point out just how nice this breast piece sculpt is. It's similar to Death Dealer's, but it is not reuse. It is a unique piece that just maybe takes some themes and some elements from that suit. Getting into articulation, we can kind of do this quick and dirty because this is basically Solomon Kane. So you've got a decent range in the neck there. You've got a ball socket joint and a ball socket in the collar as well. Decent range on that. Feels like there is a slight bit of butterfly in the shoulder, just a little bit of give there. And of course a ball jointed shoulder, double jointed elbow, and a bicep swivel. You can see his articulation does allow the coat to kind of ride up. I wish those elbow pegs hadn't been flesh toned, but it's a little thing. Forward crunch is not bad. Back crunch is pretty good. Just about great, really, for a guy wearing a cloak and some armor. And then we come into the hips there, traditional ball-jointed hips like we've seen other than on Conan. Pretty good range outward, decent range forward, and of course double-jointed knee that allows for a pretty decent range back, if not completely. And then of course Solomon Kane's boots have pretty good range of motion as well, so no trouble really there. A couple of QC things I have to point out though. For whatever reason, the right hip on this guy is loose. Not so loose that it won't hold a pose, but considerably more loose than, say, the left hip is. See how much tighter that feels. And I also notice his arms are relatively loose as well. Not so much that, again, doesn't feel like it's going to hinder posing, because it hasn't, but I just prefer that more. I don't know, it just feels a little off for what I'm used to in Mezco, especially lately where the quality control has been really high. And I didn't check this on Solomon Kane, and it appears to me that his right leg is also slightly longer than his left. Doesn't look like it's the boot. I think it's in the shin. Yeah, just one of those little things. So those aside, I feel like this Doc Knock is a very clever use of some existing parts with some very nice new stuff that kind of balances out the package. In fact, were it not for that loose hip and the kind of loose shoulders, he would easily be the best Doc Knock across the board in my collection as far as I'm concerned. Another bonus of using that Solomon Kane body is he is a little bit easier to fit in with other lines if you wanted to. I know it's funny how often I talk about Mythic Legions in Periphery on this channel lately, even though I don't own any. But I would say he's probably going to be at least a decent fit with Mythic Legions. I do have a couple Savage Crucible figures that I've talked about several times on this channel, and I think that he fits in extremely well with those, especially the Lizard Warriors that are, or the Reptilian Warriors, because they're kind of big and kind of rangy, so I think they fit well with just about everything. But they look good with this guy, and that's what I'm trying to get at. He also gave me an excuse to dig out my, whatever we called that exclusive, the Nosferatu, the second one they did, and that's a damn good looking figure, especially getting chased around by a very appropriately attired vampire hunter, complete with crosses on his sword. And yeah, they make for a good pair, I think. The other nice thing about having some majority body reuse like this is that it kind of makes it easy for me to do a short review, because we've talked about a lot of the stuff already, and it doesn't really need to be gone over in any extreme detail, because it's, you know, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but there's really not a ton of new stuff here. Just the accoutrement stuff is new. So that being said, as far as recommendation goes, QC aside, this is a very strong recommendation for me. I think he has maybe the personality that I was kind of hoping for Doc Knock all along, if that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of hard to have expectations for a character that, you know, you didn't create, and it was just kind of created to sell a figure. But this, if such a figure can have resonance, this feels more like Doc Knock to me. This is my Doc Knock. And so I'm hopeful that means that I'd like to see a variant of this figure. I know it'd be obviously close to Solomon if they were to do it in black, but I would love a black version, black with like red trim, closer to the Doc Knock modern colors. I think would be a really cool addition to this collection. So I don't know how you're going to get it now, because of course it's a Mezco exclusive and it was waitlisted shortly after it came out. But being Doc Knock, I feel like we might have some more chances. So I would definitely keep your eye out on this, especially as we get closer to what we got. We got a con coming in November, I think, and of course Halloween. He fits in right there, so maybe we'll see some kind of exclusive around there. We'll find out. Meantime, thank you, Mezco Toys, for helping me take a look at this guy, and thank you to you guys for coming to watch, and we'll see you again for the next one.